All right, picture this for a second. You've just moved to a brand new country. You're trying to settle into a new job, a totally new culture, basically a completely alien environment. You're sitting there at your desk, and suddenly the phone rings. Now, usually that's a simple everyday occurrence, right? But for you, in this specific moment, it's absolutely terrifying. You know the person on the other end is going to speak in a foreign language at native speed, and you realize you're completely frozen. The anxiety just spikes, your mind goes entirely blank, and you're just sitting there staring at this ringing phone.
Now that exact panic-inducing scenario, it isn't just some hypothetical situation. It's actually a very real experience that Ryuho Okawa, the author of the foundational book we are exploring today, Think Big, went through during a corporate assignment in the United States. In this explainer, which traces its roots back to a really pivotal lecture he gave on April 19, 2008, we are unpacking his incredible insights on how to actively pioneer your future. You see, despite being a highly capable guy, Okawa found himself wrestling with these immense language barriers and the deep culture shock of his new assignment. He was literally freezing up when it came to everyday tasks like just answering the phone.
And honestly, I think we can all relate to this on some level. We've all had those moments where we hit a breaking point. It might not be a foreign language for you, maybe it's launching a new business, taking on a massive project at work, or just dealing with a sudden huge wave of life changes. When you are operating way outside your comfort zone, the basic tasks, the phone calls, the emails, the small decisions, they suddenly morph into these monumental hurdles. It feels totally overwhelming. You start doubting your own abilities, and that hesitation, it can completely derail your progress.
Okay, let's dive into this, because how he got out of that paralysis is the absolute foundation of our toolkit today. He didn't use some complex, multi-layered psychological strategy. No, he shifted his entire reality with literally just two simple words: I can. He decided to just go for it, to stop worrying about perfect grammar or sounding foolish, and simply declare to himself, I can. That aggressive pivot, that flat-out refusal to be a victim of his circumstances, became his massive turning point. It's the realization that breaking through a plateau starts entirely with a defiant shift in your own mindset.
Section 1. Big Dreams and Intermediate Goals.
Because, let's be real, a positive mindset alone isn't going to build an empire. You absolutely need structure. Once you've accepted that you can do it, you have to define what it actually is. To pioneer a new future, you've got to have a massive vision. But a vision without a roadmap, well, that's just a daydream. So here is how we bridge that gap. Step 1 is to envision a massive dream. Really give yourself permission to think huge. Step 2 is where the magic happens. You must establish intermediate goals. Think of it like this. If your ultimate dream is reaching the peak of Mount Everest, your intermediate goals are your base camps. You obviously can't leap to the top in one single bound, and staring at the peak the whole time will just intimidate you. You map out the base camps, and then, step 3, you just focus entirely on executing the immediate next step to get to that very first camp. It turns the impossible into the highly practical.
Section 2. Planting Seeds of Positivity.
And this brilliantly illustrates a core metaphor Okawa uses. Think of your mind, especially during your student days or really any formative period of intense learning, as a fertile garden. The harvest you reap in your future is directly, undeniably linked to the seeds you plant in that soil right now. To guarantee a rich harvest, you have to be super intentional about your seeds. Broaden your interests way beyond your immediate bubble. Read exceptional, challenging books. When you actively consume high-quality ideas like that, you are systematically cultivating positive thoughts. You are packing your subconscious with the exact raw materials it needs to solve problems, recognize opportunities, and keep an optimistic outlook when things inevitably get tough. But, let's be totally real for a second. Every garden gets weeds. And when you are chasing big goals, the most aggressive, invasive weed out there is fear. Fear of failure, fear of what other people think, fear of the unknown. If you let it grow, it will completely choke out those positive seeds. So how do you get rid of it? You use the ultimate weed puller, faith. And in this context, faith is a profound, unwavering belief, whether that's in a higher power, in your guiding purpose, or just in your own potential. It's utilizing that deep conviction as a weapon to aggressively root out terror and anxiety the exact second they start to sprout.
Section 3. Mastering Time and Action.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we take that thriving mental garden and unleash it into the physical world to generate massive output. It's all about how high achievers completely reframe our concept of a 24-hour day by utilizing what's called fragmented time. We all have the exact same amount of time, but we tend to focus only on the big chunks, right? Sleep and core work. But consider all those smaller slices of time. The 15 minutes you spend commuting,
the 10 minutes just waiting for a meeting to start, those short little breaks between tasks. If you can learn to effectively utilize these tiny pockets of fragmented time to read, to plan, to answer a few quick emails, you suddenly unlock hours of hidden potential every single day that most people literally just throw away.
And how do you actually use that extra time? By upgrading your operating system. Most of us are taught sequential work. Start task A, finish task A, then, and only then, move on to task B. It's safe, sure, but it's incredibly slow. Okawa advocates for something called simultaneous parallel work. Basically, this means juggling multiple projects at once. While you are waiting for a response on one project, you are actively pushing forward on another. It allows your subconscious to kind of chew on a complex problem in the background while your conscious mind tackles something more straightforward. It literally multiplies your output. But there is a catch. Actually, scratch that, it's more like a strict requirement. So the crucial point is, simultaneous parallel work entirely falls apart if you are a procrastinator. To juggle multiple things successfully, you absolutely must develop a habit of instant decisions and immediate action. You cannot let tasks pile up on your desk or sit unread in your inbox. When a problem arises, analyze it quickly, make a firm decision, and execute on it immediately. You have to keep that momentum flowing. Speed of implementation is for sure your ultimate competitive advantage here.
So, we've covered some really incredible ground in this explainer. From breaking through the total paralysis of new challenges with a simple "I can," to mapping out those vital intermediate goals, we've talked about pulling the weeds of fear with the weapon of faith, unlocking the hidden hours of fragmented time, and multiplying your output through decisive parallel action. But as we all know, knowledge is only potential power until you actually apply it. So I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on as you go about your day. Look at your own life, look at your own ambitions, and ask yourself right now, what specific seed will you plant today to pioneer your future? Think about it, decide, and then take action.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So, have you ever felt like success is just this impossibly tangled, complicated puzzle, like you just can't seem to figure it out? Well, today we are totally flipping the script on that idea. We're jumping right into an explainer of Chapter 2 from our source text, originally delivered back on May 3, 2008. We're going to unpack a radically simple mindset, one that literally clears away the mental fog and sets you on a path to what the author calls refreshing success. Let's get right into it. You know, the subtitle of this work, Be Positive and Be Brave, honestly hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the exact mental attitude we need to actually unlock a bright future. Notice it doesn't say, be endlessly strategic or stress out constantly, right? It zeroes in on positivity and bravery. And these aren't just passive feelings you sit around waiting for. They are active, everyday choices. Because let's be real, it takes genuine bravery to stay positive in a world that so easily leans negative. And making that active choice, that is the absolute bedrock of the philosophy we're exploring today.
All right, Section 1, first step to refreshing success.
So how do we actually start building this? Well, it's not about making some grand sweeping gesture right on day one. It actually starts with something way simpler, the everyday words we use. Think about a phrase we've all said a million times, I'm fine. In the original text, the Japanese phrase, watashi wa genki desu, carries this really profound weight of affirmation. The crucial point here is that routinely declaring a simple positive phrase, like I'm fine, acts as a literal key. It actively carves out a brighter future for you. When you say it, you aren't just reporting your status. You're commanding your reality and laying down a serious baseline of strength.
And this brilliantly illustrates that success isn't just about what you do. It's about cultivating a daily mental attitude that fiercely rejects negativity and completely embraces potential. Think of the words you use as the software programming your mind. If you're constantly feeding your brain words of defeat, well, your mental attitude is going to naturally slouch right into failure. But by consistently choosing affirming, positive language, you are building an invisible, impenetrable armor against whatever the day throws at you. You're literally shaping the lens through which you see the world's opportunities.
Moving on to Section 2, the courage to discard and simple thinking.
Okay, we all know adult life gets pretty complex. As we gain knowledge, rack up life experiences, and face our share of failures, we naturally tend to overcomplicate things. We start anticipating every tiny thing that could possibly go wrong. Basically, we get caught in a mental spider web. It's a sticky, restrictive trap of complex thoughts and endless overthinking.
And that is exactly why we absolutely must develop the courage to discard all those excess thoughts and just embrace simplicity. We have to take scissors to the web. It's about making a clean break and saying, you know what? I am not going to entertain 100 negative what-ifs today.
I want you to really pause and reflect on this for a second. Have you let your own mind get caught up in these webs of overthinking? Are you trapped in a sticky situation that you kind of created yourself? And if so, can you find the bravery to just sweep it all away? Seriously, it takes an incredible amount of courage to discard the complex excuses we build up and just boil a problem down to its simplest, most solvable form.
Which brings us to Section 3, Making Difficulties Polishing Materials. Now look, simplifying your thoughts doesn't mean life suddenly becomes a walk in the park. Life is going to have hurdles, no doubt about it. When inevitable failures or difficulties hit, it is completely natural to feel down. But here is the trap, allowing those hardships to mutate into a long-lasting inferiority complex that just paralyzes you. An inferiority complex is like dragging a heavy anchor. It takes a temporary situational setback and turns it into a permanent judgment about your self-worth. It whispers that because you failed once, you are a failure. And we have to actively, aggressively reject that narrative.
So how exactly do we reject it? Well, first, instead of playing the victim, you've got to use courage to tackle those difficulties head-on. Second, you make a mental pivot. You actively reframe them positively. And third, this is where the real magic happens. You use the difficulty itself as the abrasive material you need to polish and refine your character. Think of a rough stone. It doesn't become a beautifully polished gem by just sitting on a soft velvet cushion, right? It becomes a gem through friction, through being ground against harsh, abrasive surfaces. Your hardships are your polishing materials. They aren't there to break you. They're there to reveal your brilliance.
Let's dive into Section 4, Person of Light, and the idea of self-generation.
This brings us to the ultimate transformation, the absolute pinnacle of this entire empowering mindset. Once you've cleared out those mental spiderwebs and actually learned to use hardship to polish your character, what do you become? You become what the text calls a person of light. Rather than sitting around waiting for someone else to motivate you, praise you, or give you permission to succeed, you become a self-generating powerhouse. It's like you're your own independent power grid. You are lighting your own inner fire and radiating positive imagery to everyone around you without relying on anyone else to plug you in. You're not just reflecting light anymore, you are generating it. A person of light walks into a room full of overthinkers and pessimists and immediately elevates the whole frequency just by having a self-sustaining, positive mental attitude.
So, the absolute fastest shortcut to this kind of refreshing success, it's to immediately stop making excuses about why you can't do something. That is step 1. From there, you cut away those complex, tangled spider webs of overthinking. You face your difficulties not as tragedies, but as real chances to grow and polish yourself. And finally, you generate your own positive energy, relying entirely on your own inner light. Honestly, when you string these actions together, success stops being some complicated maze. It becomes a clear, straight path.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to take away from today's explainer. What specific excuse are you finally going to drop right now, today, so you can become your own source of light? Really think about it. Choose bravery, clear away those sticky spiderwebs, and start generating your own brilliant future today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Welcome to today's explainer. We're going to be diving into a fascinating concept called Think Big, Escaping the Exam Smart Trap. Honestly, we're unpacking a really incredible chapter today, one that totally challenges the very foundation of how we approach success in our modern society. You know, we spend our early years being told exactly what to study, exactly how to score high on tests, and exactly how to fit in. But what if the very skills that make you a great student are the exact same habits holding you back from achieving massive success in the real world? Ask yourself honestly, have you ever held back on a truly big idea just because you were terrified it wouldn't work out? It's kind of crazy when you think about it. We see these incredibly intelligent, capable people who literally have all the tools to change the world, and they suddenly just freeze up when faced with real-world risks. They calculate the odds, they see the potential for failure, and they decide to just play it safe. But why? Why does this happen to our brightest minds? And where does this intense fear of getting it wrong actually come from? Well, that brings us right to our source material for today. We're looking at Chapter 3 of Ryuho Okawa's book, which was published back on August 1st, 2010. The title itself is a literal command, Think Big,
And the core message really pushes us to be positive and be brave to achieve our dreams. Now, this isn't just about, feeling good or some vague self-help advice. It's a strategic breakdown of why bravery and a positive mindset are absolutely crucial prerequisites for unlocking your full potential. The source material argues pretty heavily that without these two specific elements, your dreams are going to remain just that, dreams.
And there's a harsh, kind of unspoken reality here. Many people, and the source highlights this particularly within the context of Japanese society, are entirely unaware of what the author calls the power of thinking. Why is that? Well, it's largely because they are boxed in by societal structures and cultural jealousy. Think about it. When a culture heavily emphasizes conformity, standing out or thinking a little too big can instantly attract criticism or jealousy. This structural pressure subtly trains people to suppress their own imaginations. They end up dimming their own light just so they don't offend anyone else. But this isn't just a regional issue, it's really a human one. Society often rewards blending in, which quietly kills our intrinsic power to think expansively.
So the really crucial point the author makes here is this concept of being exam smart. The source uses the Japanese term jukun shusai, which describes a very specific, very restrictive way of thinking. I mean, when you're trained to just ace exams, what are you actually doing? You're essentially being trained to spot flaws. You're looking to find that one incorrect answer among the multiple choices. You get conditioned to always expect the worst and to avoid taking a risk at all costs, simply because a wrong guess hurts your score. While this makes you look absolutely brilliant on paper, it creates a deeply pessimistic mindset when you step into the real world. You become a total expert at seeing what could go wrong, and that completely paralyzes your potential to build something new.
All of this builds to a pretty profound shift in perspective. Your ultimate success in work, and really in life, isn't about perfectly avoiding mistakes. It is strictly limited by how big you allow yourself to dream. The author says the size of your success is directly determined by the size of your thoughts. It's kind of like a container. Think of your thoughts as the container, and your success as the water pouring into it. If your thoughts are tiny and restricted by that exam-smart fear, your success is going to hit a ceiling very, very quickly. You simply can't achieve massive, world-changing success if your internal blueprint is designed for small, risk-free, incremental steps. Unlocking the power of thinking literally means expanding that container.
Let's compare these two mentalities for a second, and I want you to ask yourself which one you belong to right now. On one side, we have the exam-smart mindset. Are you trapped by pessimistic expectations? Are you constantly terrified of failure, just keeping your head down to avoid societal jealousy? Or, on the flip side, are you ready to adopt the think big mindset? Because this alternative is fiercely optimistic. It sets massive, almost unreasonable goals, and crucially, it embraces risk rather than running away from it. The source material is challenging us to make a conscious, daily choice to step out of that cautious pessimism and step firmly into radical optimism.
And that brings us to a piece of advice from the text that completely flips traditional wisdom right on its head. The source material emphatically challenges us to raise our goals incredibly high and keep trying, completely ignoring the high probability of failure. Now, the exam-smart brain absolutely hates this. It looks at, say, a 90% chance of failure, calculates the emotional damage of getting a bad grade in life, and politely says, "No, thank you." But the think big mentality, it understands that the magnitude of the goal is what actually matters. Think about iconic innovators throughout history. They didn't build global empires by getting straight A's and avoiding missteps. Their early careers were usually riddled with literal failures, rejected ideas, and near bankruptcies. They were the complete opposite of exam smart. But because they set a massive goal, even when failure was highly probable, the very act of stretching themselves transformed their capabilities. You are always going to learn way more from failing at a massive goal than you do from succeeding at a tiny, insignificant one.
Now, for those of you in your 20s, or really anyone who mentors young adults, this next concept is absolutely vital. The author places a huge emphasis on this specific decade of life. The intense studying, the relentless effort, and the massive goals you pursue in your 20s aren't just about landing a good job right out of the gate. That early effort is the foundation. It acts a lot like compound interest. The mental resilience and the sheer capacity to think big that you forge right now will compound into an unstoppable lifelong power later on. It becomes the engine that's going to drive you for decades.
There's a very clear ripple effect to this early effort, too. Let's just walk through the logical progression the text lays out. Step 1 is that intense study and effort in your 20s. And remember, this isn't just about reading textbooks. It's about studying life, taking risks, and thinking big. That directly leads to Step 2, developing massive personal power. You become someone capable of handling heavy burdens, which of course leads to Step 3, individual success. You start actually achieving those massive goals. But it doesn't stop there. The ultimate culmination is step 4, fueling national prosperity. Your personal dedication doesn't just make you successful, it acts as the very engine for the entire country's economic and cultural prosperity. Your success literally lifts everyone else up.
And that beautifully ties everything together. Breaking free from the exam-smart mentality isn't just a self-help exercise for your own benefit. When you choose to be positive, when you choose to be brave, and when young people push for unprecedented success, it's actually a necessary act of civic bravery. A nation simply cannot thrive if its brightest minds are paralyzed by the fear of failure. It thrives when individuals decide to think big, take the hit if they fall, and just keep building. Your individual bravery directly contributes to building a thriving, prosperous society. I really want you to let this undeniable conclusion from the chapter sink in for a moment. Quote, "In the end, life asks not what you didn't do, but what you achieved." When you look back at your life, there is no prize awarded for having the fewest mistakes. Safely avoiding failure, dodging criticism, and perfectly predicting what could go wrong means absolutely nothing if you didn't actually step into the arena and build something. History doesn't remember the critics who spotted the flaws, right? It remembers the brave few who thought big and actually achieved their vision.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want you to seriously think about one pivotal question. We've seen how the exam-smart trap limits us, how societal jealousy tries to keep us small, and exactly why it is so vital to ignore the probability of failure. So, I'm challenging you to step out of that trap right now. What is the one massive goal you've been way too analytical, too cautious, or too smart to pursue? It is time to start thinking big. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I challenge you to take that first brave step today. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the core philosophies of true success. We're going to unpack some incredibly profound concepts from Chapter 4, The Path to Success, originally delivered on April 29, 2011. You know, if you've ever felt like your goals are just way out of reach, or maybe you've been told you don't have that innate genius, well, this explainer is absolutely for you. We're going to talk about how to break free from the myth of natural talent and actually unlock the potential that's already sitting right there inside you. Our foundation today comes from the concepts in Think Big. And listen, this isn't just about wishful thinking or some vague pep talk. It's a highly practical, structural guide to completely transforming your reality. The ultimate goal here is to inspire us all to be genuinely positive and brave. As you'll see, it proves that sustained, everyday effort can completely, dramatically change the entire course of our lives.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The truth of the ugly duckling, 2. Diamonds at your feet, 3. Knowledge is power, 4. Time is money, and finally, 5. Divide the difficulty. Let's get right into it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, The Truth of the Ugly Duckling. This is a massive wake-up call for anyone who feels like they're just lacking natural talent.
You know how society loves to use early metrics, right? Things like childhood IQ test scores, just to arbitrarily define our limits. It's so easy to get a poor score and instantly feel like you're the ugly duckling, completely lacking any real talent. But here is the amazing truth. Those initial evaluations do not dictate your final destination. Not at all. Even if you were that kid with the poor childhood IQ scores, steady, continuous effort over a long period of time leads to massive personal growth. You don't have to be bound by the labels people put on you. It's that long-term effort that literally transforms you into the swan.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, Diamonds at Your Feet. This builds on that growth and introduces a really powerful, legendary metaphor.
It's so tempting to look at someone else's flashy success and get jealous, isn't it? But there's this legendary concept of diamonds sleeping at your feet. It means that immense, completely unrecognized talent and hidden potential already exist exactly where you are standing right now. You do not need to look somewhere else or try to be someone else to find success. You just have to realize the absolute importance of noticing your own inner potential, your own rough diamonds waiting to be unearthed in your own life.
And this ties into something absolutely crucial, human psychology. Simply put, humans become exactly what they think they are. If you keep seeing yourself as that ugly duckling who fails tests, you're subconsciously clipping your own wings. You have to break that cycle right now. Your mindset literally dictates your reality. So you've got to stop focusing on what you lack, recognize the diamonds at your feet, and start actively visualizing your success.
Okay, so we've shifted our mindset. Now we need the fuel. That brings us to Section 3, Knowledge is Power.
Believing deeply in this classic adage, knowledge is power, is the foundational bedrock for all of this. I mean, think about it. The most amazing raw potential is totally useless if you don't have the tools to refine it. Doing the rigorous work required to polish your inner diamond takes immense power, and knowledge is exactly that power. It's the friction you need to polish that rough stone into something brilliant.
But here's the catch. To truly leverage this power, you can't just learn at a casual, normal pace. No way. You are actually required to actively absorb many times more knowledge than the people around you. You have to outlearn everyone else. That massive accumulation of knowledge is what creates the leverage you need to make your talents explode. Believing that knowledge is power and being ravenous for it is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary.
But hey, knowledge alone isn't going to cut it. We have to apply it consistently. Which brings us perfectly to Section 4. Time is money.
This second maxim, time is money, is a huge reminder that time is our single most valuable, non-renewable resource when we're developing our hidden talents. How you spend today directly impacts your worth tomorrow.
There's actually a fascinating paradox here. On one hand, you have to fully embrace the spirit of time is money, meaning you don't waste a single moment. You apply extreme focus. But on the other hand, you have to be incredibly patient in your journey. You can't panic if you don't see results instantly. You just have to continue your efforts relentlessly over a very long period of time. It's that intense daily focus, combined with immense, long-term patience, that genuinely turns an ordinary person into an extraordinary one.
Finally, what happens when this sustained effort suddenly slams into a giant, seemingly insurmountable wall? Let's look at Section 5, divide the difficulty.
When we hit a massive difficulty, it's so easy to just freeze up, right? But here is the ultimate technique. Step 1, do not run. Face that massive, hard-to-overcome difficulty head on. Step 2, take that massive problem and subdivide it into smaller, manageable pieces. If you look at the whole mountain, it's terrifying. But if you break it down to just the next step, it's doable. And then, Step 3, solve each small piece one by one. Conquering a giant difficulty is really just about knocking out a checklist of small, subdivided problems.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to really ponder. Have you actually looked for the diamonds sleeping at your own feet? And what massive problem are you going to break down today? Your hidden potential is already there, just waiting for you to unleash it. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking a really deep dive into source material that honestly has the power to completely rewire how you approach your career, your goals, and just your everyday life. We are talking about unlocking limitless courage. You know, we so often think of courage as something you either have or you don't. Kind of like a genetic trait, or maybe just that sudden burst of adrenaline you get when you need to kill a spider in your living room. But what if courage is actually a method? What if it's something you can actively cultivate, multiply, and use to forge yourself into a true, undeniable professional in literally whatever field you choose? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So, I have a question for you. Are you trading your greatest privilege for a safe life? Look, it is entirely human to crave comfort, right? Every instinct we have naturally pushes us toward that path of least resistance. It urges us to avoid failure, to dodge setbacks, and to stay neatly tucked inside our comfort zones, which, let's be real, is often right on the couch binge-watching our favorite shows. But we really have to ask, what is the hidden cost of that safety? Because by insulating ourselves from risk, we might actually be stripping ourselves of the exact experiences required to discover our true potential. If you've ever felt like your career or your life has just kind of plateaued because you're playing it a bit too safe, well, you are exactly where you need to be right now.
Okay, let's dive into this. The concepts we're exploring today are rooted in Chapter 5 of Ryuho Okawa's incredibly transformative book, Think Big, specifically from a section originally delivered on May 10, 2009. And the text makes this really profound assertion. For the youth, and honestly for anyone possessing a youthful growing mindset, the absolute greatest privilege you hold is courage. It's not wealth. It's not your social status. It is simply the capacity to be brave. Awakening to your own destiny, your totally unique mission in this world, and actively fulfilling it, that is the very first step of actualizing this courage. This basically means that courage isn't just some fleeting feeling you wait for. It is the active, relentless pursuit of your life's purpose.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark, absolutely uncompromising contrast we see in how people approach their careers. On one side, we have this desire for a life without setbacks. This is a purely defensive posture. It's the mindset of the employee who never pitches a new idea in a meeting just so they don't risk getting rejected. When you live this way, your primary goal is literally just not to lose. But then, on the other side, we have the willingness to face failure boldly. This is an offensive, highly proactive mindset. The source material argues that hoping for a life totally free of failure is a fundamentally flawed strategy for anyone who actually wants to achieve greatness. Think about it. If you're not failing, you are simply not pushing your boundaries. To truly advance, you must consciously abandon that desire for an easy, setback-free existence and instead eagerly challenge the unknown.
So how do we actively practice this kind of boldness? Well, there's this really powerful Japanese concept called Shinken Shobu. Literally translated, it means a duel fought with real, live swords, rather than wooden practice ones. In a modern context, it refers to those intense, high-stakes, do-or-die situations in our lives and our careers. The text emphasizes a really crucial point here. True professionals are never, ever born in safety. You simply cannot become a master of your craft through casual practice alone. A true professional is only forged in the intense heat of repeated, earnest struggles, these serious battles, where there are very real consequences. It's that exact pressure of the live blade that sharpens your skills to a true professional edge.
So what does this live blade duel actually look like in the modern world? It means you must actively choose to shoulder heavier responsibilities, rather than just running away the second difficulties arise. Look, when a crisis hits your workplace or some seemingly impossible project gets announced, the amateur steps back into the shadows. But the professional, the one actually practicing Shinken Shobu, they step forward. They resolve to fight those difficulties head-on. Taking on heavier responsibilities is the deliberate act of putting yourself right into the forge. It's a completely conscious choice to say, I am going to carry this weight, because carrying it is exactly what will make me stronger.
But let's just pause for a second and be painfully realistic here. We've established that we need to abandon safety, we need to face failure boldly, and actively seek out heavy responsibilities. But man, that sounds incredibly exhausting, doesn't it? Where does one actually find the physical, mental, and emotional energy to endure that kind of constant heavy pressure without just completely burning out? Because if we're just relying on our own ego, our pride, or maybe just our desire for a quick promotion, that well is going to run dry very, very quickly. There absolutely has to be a deeper, much more sustainable source of energy to fuel this kind of relentless courage day in and day out.
To find that energy source, we really need to understand the sheer scope of where this applies. Because this isn't some high-level philosophy reserved only for saints or world leaders or frontline first responders. This profound mission applies absolutely everywhere. Whether you're working in religion, guiding spiritual lives, in politics, shaping the future of a whole nation, or honestly, in absolutely every kind of daily work. I mean, from teaching in a classroom, to writing code at a startup, managing a retail store, or even running a busy household. Awakening to a sense of destiny and professionalism is universally applicable. Your forge is exactly where you are, right now.
So there's a specific path to tapping into that limitless energy source, and it moves in 3 distinct steps of transformation. Step 1 is to awaken to your mission, really recognizing that you have a completely unique, irreplaceable role to play in your environment. Step 2, just like we discussed, is to accept those heavy responsibilities without flinching. But step 3, this is where the true alchemy happens. Dedicate your work to the happiness of others. This right here is the ultimate paradigm shift. When you transition from working purely for your own self-preservation, your own salary, or your own status, and you shift your entire focus to how your heavy lifting makes other people's lives fundamentally better, everything changes. Which brings us to the absolute core of the source material today, the 100-fold courage method. The secret to never running out of bravery is to stop trying to generate it just for yourself. When you decide that you are fighting the intense difficulties of your job specifically to secure the happiness of your clients, your team, your family, or your community, you tap into a wellspring that is so much deeper than your individual ego. By dedicating your serious battles to the ideal of serving others, you unlock a massive multiplier effect. You don't just get a little bit braver, you literally draw out 100 times the courage you ever thought you had. It's a real game changer. I want to leave you with this really powerful thought summarizing all of this. When a person awakens to the ideal and mission of dedicating themselves to the happiness of others, they can draw out 100-fold courage from within. That courage? It's already inside you, right now, just waiting for the right motivation to pull it out. So I have to ask you, who are the people whose happiness is actually worth facing your own failures for? Find them, shoulder that heavy responsibility, and let your 100-fold courage forge you into a true professional.